Hello, fellow Dungeon Jedi Masters. Todd Moonbounce here with the first of a basics series of videos to help you out if you are brand new to the SW5E system. We're going to go over all the basic aspects of the game, player creation, how things work, in little chunks just to help you dive in and jump into this great system. So today we're going to be talking about choosing ability scores. Those are the 6 numbers that kind of are the foundation to pretty much everything your character does. Obviously the abilities themselves, the skills that go with those abilities, and your attacks and damage and a lot of other things like that. So we're not going to specifically talk about those abilities, just how we figure out those ability scores themselves. There are 3 main methods that we're going to discuss, and we'll have 1/4 additional bonus method at the end to talk about. In this video, we'll talk to both our players and DMs out there. So players, we're going to show you these methods and how you use them. And then DMs, we're going to talk about choosing these methods and how they can affect your table, the players at your table, and some advice on using one versus the other. So let's get into choosing these scores. So first up, we want to talk about the standard array. This is going to be maybe your most common method or easiest common method to utilize. And this is basically you receive a specific array of numbers, as you can see there, 15 through 8, with a couple steps from 12 to 10 and 10 to 8. And these 6 numbers are what you use to fill out your abilities. So you have your 6 abilities, you throw these numbers into those scores how you want, and there you go, you have your ability scores. The modifiers come along with that, and then you can continue building your character. So if you're at level 1, you throw these in, and then you can add on your species bonuses. In SW5E, you get background feat, so that can come with a bonus as well and help flesh out your character. So DMs, this is going to be a great method to have consistency at your table between all your players, so that none of them, if they're using a method where they roll or something else, they're not going to have a large variance in those scores. This is going to be consistent across all players. There's not going to be anything wild in that regard. And maybe the biggest thing to note is that maximum of 15. If you're at level 1 with a character, with your table, and they're using the standard array with 15, so then they add in their species bonus, which generally they get a +2 and a +1. So they add that +2 to that 15, you're up to 17. And then add on top of that the background feat. You could be at level 1, 18 in one of your ability scores for a +4. And that's pretty powerful right off the bat. So using this method reins that in, make sure you don't get a player that's way too powerful off the gate. Because, of course, you can't go past 20 with your score. So they don't have a lot of room to move unless they got some special item that allows for that. But regardless, this would be a good method to just have a level playing field for all your players off the bat. So next up, we'll talk about point buy. This is going to be another method that can be consistent at your table. So players, if you want to use point buy, or your DM says you're using point buy, it's a system of choosing your ability score, and each number comes with a cost. So you have 27 points that you can spend on your values. So here they are broken down. So again, this is a minimum maximum 8 to 15. You can't go lower than 8, you can't go higher than 15, and each number comes with a cost. So if you raise an ability to 9, that's going to cost you 1 point in your points to spend. These do not accumulate, so going from 9 to 10 does not cost 2 points. It costs 3 points. It only costs 2 points. So just look at it that if you're going to put a score up to 13, that costs you 5 points. As you can see, 14 and 15 do cost a little extra. There's a 2-point jump from 13 to 14, and then again to 15. So with this method, you potentially could have the minimum maximum would be 3 15s. That's going to be your 27 points. And then on the other side, you'd have 3 8s. So if you really wanted to max out 3 areas and you were fine with the negatives of the 8s, you could do that. But this also allows, compared to the standard array, a little bit more variance and a choice by the player to move their scores around and kind of pick what they want. They could maybe have a couple 15s and then a couple lower things compared to the standard array where that's what you get. So DMs, using point buy, just echoing that last point, it allows your players a little bit more flexibility with their scores. But for you, it again has that consistency because all the players are using the same points to spend. And your minimum 8 point, maximum 15 is going to be built into there as well. So you won't see anything too crazy. Again, talking about that 15 maximum with your bonuses of species and background, you're not going to get above 18, and that just helps create that consistent initial character. So another good option there, one to consider, and that can be a little bit more fun than just the standard array if players want a little bit of variance. So next up is the rolling method. And this one might be, I guess depending on who you ask, a lot of people might enjoy this. And I think because we like to roll dice. That's obviously a big aspect of the game. So what we're doing here is rolling 4d6. We drop the lowest from that. So we're left with 3 dice. And that becomes one of our scores. So we repeat this for 6 total times to get our 6 scores. Roll 4d6. Drop the lowest score, add them up, and you get a total. So for players, this can be fun. There's a lot of variance here. But on the flip side of that, or that variance, you potentially could roll 4 1s, and then your ability score is a 3. On the opposite end, you could roll 4 6s, and then you have an ability score of 18, which is very good. So DMs, obviously this method can be very inconsistent. You could have players that have very bad scores and some players that have very good scores, and that could potentially create some tension at the table. So be mindful of that. And you create some kind of minimum and maximum that's allowed. So you could say the minimum roll you can get is a 7, the maximum is 16, or however you want to set it. So you just have them re-roll or push points one way or the other to have it even out. I've seen a lot of methods. I think the standard array, if you add those together, it's 72 is the minimum value that you hit. So if you add up a player's 6 scores from rolling in this method and they hit that 72 or however you want to measure that, 1 point higher or lower, then you can say, all right, you meet the threshold and your scores are good to go. So just be mindful of that. What's nice with this method is that it can create some interesting characters. I think an aspect of character development with the rolls. With the other methods, you're kind of defined by the standard array or the point buy. But when you roll the dice, you might get a very high number, you might get a low number, and throw that into an area that you want to role play. Throw it in bad charisma, or throw that good number into your strength, and you want to be that's the elements of your character you really want to focus on. So from a player aspect, that can be nice if you want to build out a character in that way. So just keep that in mind, though. So that's the 4d6d1 method, commonly used. And those are the 3 basic methods that you'll generally see for creating your ability scores. So we're going to go through one more method. It's similar to the 4d6d1. I've seen a couple different names for it. I refer to it as stat banks. So what we do with stat banks is we roll the 4d6d1. We do this 3 times. You're going to keep those results in order. And these 3 numbers are the first half of your scores. So we have 3 scores right now. Now what we'll do is take those numbers in order and subtract them from a bank. So the banks we use are 23, 25, and 27, and do this in order. So your first number is subtracted from 23, second from 25, 1/3 from 27. Now, the number you get from the subtraction is the second half of your scores. So you should now have your 6 total scores for your abilities. With this, generally, you don't allow a score higher than 18, and you do not allow a number lower than 7. So you just shift the numbers back and forth till you satisfy that, or you can have the player re-roll, however you want this to happen. This is a fun method. It's one that I use quite a bit. It allows the variance and fun of rolling the stats, but with the stat banks, I think it helps a little bit in the consistency side of things. If you roll high in one area, you do that math with the subtraction, and then you might get low on the other end. If you're rolling the middle average numbers, like your 11s, 12s, 13s, you're going to get something similar on the other end of it. So, it's not bad either way. And then if you roll bad, you'll likely end up with a better number after you do the subtraction. So it balances things out, I think, a lot better than just straight rolling this. So I want to give a quick example of how this works. So we've got our stat banks here, 23, 25, 27. And we're going to, do our first 3 rolls. So I got a 15 on the first roll, 11, and 13. So if we do our math, we have an 8, 14, and 14. So those are our 6 ability scores: 15, 14, 14, 13, 11, and 8. That's a pretty solid batch of scores, I think. It's, nothing too high. We're not above 15, nothing below 8. So we're right there in those standard values. But, we got a couple 14s in there in the 13. I think this would be a little bit more than what you'd see with point buy potentially. I'd have to throw it in and see, but this is a good average number, and you can see how, a good roll comes out with a lower roll. It balances things out. So, for example, as I said, if you go above or below the thresholds here, 27, say I roll an 8, that's going to give me a 19. So what I do in this situation is I just slide the numbers. So I would slide 1 point over to that 9, from the 19 to the 8, making it a 9. The 19 comes down to an 18. I've met my limits, and I'm good to go. So again, I've got that really nice high number, and then I have that lower number. Obviously, this is great for the 27 because a 9 isn't too bad. It's still a -1 on your modifier, but it's nothing to be too upset about. So that is the stat banks. That's a method I recommend if your players really want to roll dice. It's fun to do so, and you get some variance there. So that is basically our different methods for choosing your ability scores: the standard array, point buy, 40-61, and then the stat banks. So hopefully this helps players out there understand those different methods and find one that you might enjoy. And then DMs, hopefully you've seen reasons why to use one versus the other as you begin to set up your campaign. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure to check out all of our content, dungeonjedimasters.com. We have a podcast on Podbean. You obviously are here on our YouTube. Connect with us on Twitter. Let us know what you think of our videos or other content you'd like us to talk about. If you'd like to join us in a live stream of a SW5E game, you can do that via Twitch. And always, if you feel that you'd like to support the content that we put out, we are on Patreon. You can find us there and give a donation in that area. So we thank everyone for your time watching the video, and may the force be with you.